Mother Superior.
I think a trip home is called for.
Today we are taking a deep dive in the latest trailer of episode 3 of Dune Prophecy, which is titled Sisterhood Above All. Now episode 2 left us wondering if Lila is gone forever, trapped in her own mind after performing the agony, as Valia was left speechless after using a voice on Hart and it having no effect on him. Now episode 1 had a lot of heavy lifting to do to provide us with a lot of exposition, while episode 2 really laid the groundwork of what's to come, which speaking of, it looks like episode 3 will take us back in the past to really understand what young Valia and Tula had to do to become members of the Sisterhood. Now the synopsis for episode 3 reads, following a tragedy, young Tula worries about being accepted despite her family name, while a skeptical Valia struggles with the decision to take the vow of sisterhood. With that being said, spoiler warning ahead for the previous episode alongside my theories and predictions based on this trailer, which by the way, you can find the full trailer of this third episode in the description of this very video. Now our first shot of the trailer shows Valia most likely returning from her trip to tell the rest of the Sisterhood about their new enemy Hart, as you'll see the mother surrounding her as well as the Adosha in the back, as Valia states that a trip home is called for. As we get the flashback to young Valia on the planet her family was sent to after being banned for being labeled as cowards during the war against the thinking machines. You'll notice the whales in the background, which speaks to their trade as being whale fur sellers, as this was seen and mentioned back in episode 1. We see how Valia wasn't convinced that this life on this planet was one that she was willing to endure, as she has aspirations to leading the Imperium. Which brings us to seeing young Tula, as well as shots of what's assumed to be the rest of the direct family members. Maybe they have brothers and a mom and a dad, and we might get to meet them in this episode, and maybe they have something that Valia can use, hinting at her return to going back home. Now as a Game of Thrones fan, I almost jumped out of my seat when I saw Mark Addy, who played one of my all-time favorite characters in that show, who went by the name of Robert Baratheon.
Look at this idiot. One ball and no brains. He can't even put a man's armor on him properly.
You're too fat for your armor.
Oh, it's funny, is it?
Now he's listed as playing Valia and Tula's uncle and a once powerful member of the banished House of Harkonnen. Now it's also said that he blames Valia for their family's fall from grace, which may speak to this moment in the trailer when he calls Valia a sorcerer after it appears she tries using a voice on him or someone in this scene.
Be quiet, sorceress!
We have these quick shots of showing us young and older Tula, as older Tula is seen here with the device that we've seen the Mother Superiors carrying around, and we know that this gives them access to the breeding archives. To me, this might be Tula seeking ways to get Lila back from after what happened to her during the agony process. As that leads us to one of the sisters telling Tula that nobody has ever returned from the state that Lila was left in, as Tula states that she will do what needs to be done when she chooses. As the camera pans into the glass, it seems like there's some type of liquid inside of here, but it also might be mixed in with some spice. Next we see this shot of people chanting around a fire, and it seems that they are saying Atreides. Here's where we see young Tula again, and there's an orange glow coming off of her face, which makes me believe that she's at the same spot where these people are chanting. From here we see this intimate scene, which I believe Tula is here as well, because the white dress from the previous shot is the same one that we see here. Now I believe that Tula may have had a relationship going on, and this is where my theory starts to kick in. Now back in episode 2, when Valia leaves to investigate what happened to Pruitt and Kesha, she was hesitant to let Tula lead to school because she's afraid of making tough choices, but Tula says something on the lines of having made tough choices in the past. What if Tula was either willingly or unwillingly in a relationship with an Atreides and may have gotten pregnant in the process, and let's just say this was all a part of some big plan from her older sister to prove themselves in order to get a part of the sisterhood, or at the very least they did this in order to get some type of power or control. As we get this shot of Tula who's looking up at a bull, which we know has close ties to Atreides, which again makes me believe that this is all taking place in the same camp, as it's here where we hear Tula saying, "Promise me this will be a fresh start for us." Again, has Tula been used by her sister to gain control or power, or will we see one of their first assignments to initiate themselves with the sisterhood by infiltrating House Atreides? And this also might speak to one of the many reasons why the two houses hate one another. As we have this shot of the sisters leaving the ship, and young Valia states that we have a new purpose now, this may be the introduction to the sisterhood as we see Mother Rakella. Here we have the shot of the person who's dressed in all white. Again, this could be a young Tula who's in that same white dress from the previous clips that we've seen in this trailer so far. As here we see Valia performing the agony on herself, which, knowing how driven she is and based on things that we saw in this very trailer alone, it wouldn't surprise me if Valia performed the agony on herself and sped up the process to being a part of the sisterhood and proving herself worthy by immediately becoming a Reverend Mother without waiting 10 years to practice their ways. I'm almost thinking that she maybe forced herself into this group by jumping straight into becoming a Reverend Mother. Now we see young Valia screaming in agony after doing the process. Now we know that she survives this process, but I am very curious to see if we see her perspective of her seeing her ancestors like we saw with Lila in episode 2. As we get these shots here, we have someone stating crisis survival advancements as the group of sisters look at who I assume is Valia, most likely after just joining the sisterhood and maybe even after performing the agony. As we see Dorothea here, it was very clear back in episode 1 that her and Valia didn't get along well, and it seemed that her and Dorothea's grandmother, the Mother Supreme, favored Valia, which added fuel to Dorothea disapproving of her. As we get these quick flashes into present day of Valia and Theodosia leaving the Emperor's palace into a shot of two unknown characters on a horse. As we get this really quick shot of someone's hand dropping, and again, I think this goes back to Tula being the person that I believe was getting intimate earlier in the trailer, and again, I believe she is willing or unwillingly in a relationship with an Atreides. Maybe he was the head of that Atreides at that particular location, but ultimately she had to kill them. Again, going back to Tula saying she's made tough decisions before, maybe this was one of them and her having to be responsible for murdering an Atreides. We end with the shot of Tula walking into the gardens, into the shot of Lila in a chamber with what seems to be that same material that Tula had in that cup, and again, I believe she's experimenting with the spice in order to get Lila back. Now, I'll share the theory back in my episode 2 breakdown that I could see Tula maybe looking for Lila's mother and having her perform the agony in order to save her daughter Lila. As we have this shot here of the mothers from a shot looking up at them, which to me speaks to someone entering that realm after performing the agony. Now this could be Lila's perspective with Tula trying to help her out and getting her out of that realm, or this could be a shot from Violet's perspective from what we see her taking the agony and doing that process earlier in this trailer. As our last shot shows Valia in present day in what seems to be an elevator telling someone that sisterhood above all, which again is the title of this episode, but it makes me think her saying this now might speak to her doing something that's going to service the sisterhood. Now, it's important to note that we didn't see any present timeline shots of the Emperor or Nez or Hart, but I do believe that while the episode will be mostly focusing on the past, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the storylines be split up between the timelines being the past and the present, and the percentage being more like 60-40. Now the question is, what will Valia find on her trip back home? Will we see any of her or Tula's direct family still being alive, like a mother and a father and of course her uncle? Do they have other siblings or other relatives that will matter in this storyline? What sacrifices have each of these sisters, Valia and Tula, made to get into their sisterhood? Did Tula have a relationship with an Atreides that led to a death or a pregnancy in order to gain something? Will Tula find some way to get Lila back? And if she is brought back, it was said that no one has ever made that return before, so will she come back completely different? Well, we'll find out this Sunday, December 1st, so make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, make sure you hit the bell notification, that way you don't miss out on any of my Dune Prophecy coverage once the episode releases. If you all like these trailer breakdowns, I'll continue to do them for the rest of the season, so let me know by liking this video, sharing this video, but also sharing your thoughts and your theories based on this trailer. Thank you all for watching, and remember, you all are awesome, stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next breakdown.